My name is Rick Firestone.
My name is Vince Bazzelli.
And my name is Ben Bugale.
And you are listening to pixelprojectradio, a video game and video game club style podcast where we talk about the games that we play, and hopefully you want to listen to us talk about playing. Today's game is Firewatch. Gentlemen, how are you today? I will direct the conversation toward Ben. He raised his hand. Go, Ben.
No, I was pointing to Rick.
Nope.
All right, well, here we are. It's too late, I guess. Doing fine. The tomatoes are rampaging onwards. I'm glad to see that you are back safely from your trip, Vince.
Yes, I am back. Definitely back. God.
Vince, I don't know if you checked out our Checkpoint episode yet, but we, safe to say that much like this episode, we came up with a lot of conspiracy theories about what you were doing.
No, those were facts. Those all happened.
What I was doing? Why?
You tell me why you were trying to hunt for truffles in the Dolomites, you silly Willy.
Yeah, don't deflect the questions onto us, mister.
Actually, I was cave diving in Mexico, so if you must know.
Wow. That sounds like a euphemism.
I'm getting distinct flashbacks from a specific Sopranos scene.
It sounds like a euphemism. Wait, what? So in this euphemism, Ben, what is Mexico?
Mexico
symbolizing.
Mexico is a code name for someone who you won't actually tell us the name of. And cave diving, well, you can put two and two together there, pal.
Oh no, you couldn't be farther from it. I wish you were right.
Ugh.
Rick just made a face like he was enjoying himself right now.
What a way to start this one off, huh?
So, well, I mean, we need a little bit of lightheartedness before we talk about this game in particular. It's a shorty, but I think it's a nice length. It's dense enough. It's got enough content. I think the voice acting is very good. I think there's a lot of good stuff to talk about in this game, and there is definitely a lot of conversation, a lot of discourse to be had. So...
It is a shorty, and I was thinking about this. I'm a big fan of longer games, JRPGs, Personas, Witchers, Disco Elysiums. And I generally, when I complete a game, I generally feel like, yeah, this could have been just as good if it were 10% shorter. And this game falls in a sweet spot where it's no, this length was okay. I'm cool with this. I don't want every one of my games to be 2 to 5 hours. But this was really nice. It was a really nice, refresher.
It was nice to play. I played this in the morning a bunch. Go ahead, Ben. Sorry. Go.
No. I was just going to say it's a nice pace. It's, you can take it however you want to take it. You know what I mean? Exactly what you're saying there, Vince. You're talking about playing it in the morning. Yeah, it's very...
Yes, sir. In the morning time when I was drinking my coffee.
Oh, yeah. No, it can be it can... I don't want to give anything away yet, but it's a good game.
So let's see. I'm gonna throw up two, and you guys snatch one. Would you guys like to talk about the development, or would you like to talk about the gameplay first?
I was actually, if it's all right, hoping we could do our trademark patented reason that people come to the podcast, what makes us stand out from the entirety of the field, assigning our arbitrary number rating.
How could I forget? Oh my god, I can't believe I forgot.
We're the only podcast that does this.
So yes. Naturally, that means Ben, you're going first. Go ahead.
I'd be happy to. Firewatch. This walking simulator steeps you deep into Henry and his life, giving you plenty of choices to make. The automatic personal investment this game envelops you in makes this walking simulator a little too real and has you doubting your own decisions as if the game has consequences in your own life. A captivating story weaved into the life, in air quotes here, A captivating story weaved into the life, in air quotes here, you live, plunge you, the player, into this story, which is paired well with the legitimate human limitations through controls and mechanics. 8.7 out of 10.
I think that's our first break away from the 0.0 or 0.5 system.
Ben, that was so long.
I know. I have a lot of things to say about it because it hits you on multiple levels. You know what I mean? It's not just like game, it's in you.
Oh, it
You know what I mean?
does. It does. I feel like these one sentence reviews are just becoming too long. I love that though. I think that's hysterical.
My first review was a one sentence, and then I heard other people doing two and a half.
Well,
and
we
I was
did
like,
two for a while, and then we always do this every time. If someone breaks the mold, someone's really short or really long.
I gave up on the one, so.
Hey, ready? You want to hear I really did a one. This is a real one.
All right, one.
All right, here we go. Whew. As long as we're keeping a keen watch, the fires won't burn anything. 8 out of 10.
Short and sweet, ready to eat. I love it.
I liked it.
I guess I'm kind of somewhere in the middle, and it seems like we all kind of felt the same way. Firewatch is an immersive experience that leaves the player with as many questions as it does the main character. Life doesn't always tidy up neatly, and if you can put aside the mild dissonances that exists, it's an experience that is at times peaceful and at times gripping. 7 out of 10 for me. Really liked it.
Yeah, agree. Big agree. I like how I was thinking about, as you were reading yours, Rick, how we're all different in the way that we use our prose. Like Ben, yours is so I appreciate all three angles of it. I think it's great. It's incredible. It's beautiful to me. I had a moment.
Oh, each of them has their own depth. Like yours, Vince, though short and sweet, there's a whole galaxy behind that one short statement you made.
Oh, for sure. I really I had a big emotional impact from this game. I feel there were points in the actual story when I was playing that I felt urgency, I felt scared. There were times where I felt real consequence in terms of the context of the story, which we'll talk about. But I very much enjoyed it. Yeah, nice and short. It was a good pace too because it was that short. Nice, cute little map.
Yeah, so why don't we move into the development? This game was developed by Camposanto Studios. I think it's a studio. I'm not sure. Camposanto, and they partnered with Panic, and they released this on the Unity engine in February of 2016. And it was initially for Windows, OS X, Linux, and PlayStation. Later that year, they ported it to Xbox, and then later in 2018, it came to Switch. I played this on PC. How did you boys play it?
PC.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Switch.
I mean, I'm sure it runs fine on Switch, but there's something about the crispness of the cell shading. We can get into that in a minute here, but having that on a bigger monitor, it's really nice.
I played this on my OLED TV. I very much liked it. It was very, very, very nice, atmospheric, beautiful.
The first time that I'd ever played this game was actually last October, so October 2020, on vacation, because I had put out a challenge to friends to suggest to me scary games and the likeness thereof that I could play, immerse myself in. And my cousin, Nick Divers, said, hey, you should try Firewatch. And I was like, And while I wouldn't necessarily call it a scary game, there's some suspenseful moments, and yeah, it really pulls you in between between the cell shading and the ambiance. It's just neat.
Yeah. What did you guys think of the music?
I liked the usage of it. I liked how sparse it was. I don't think the game would have worked quite as well for me had the music constantly kind of been pumping out of a music box that existed only for me.
Like a Zelda style game where if you leave an area, then another piece of music just comes on and is always on kind of deal.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that kind of with that take on gaming. I just for this kind of thing where it wants you to feel like you are the character, like most walking sims want you to do. I think constant music would not be an additive. But I really liked how it served the music served as sort of punctuation points.
Right. Let's keep talking mechanics. So the crunching of the leaves, or the way that they use the soundtrack, the way that they immerse you. using audio, as well as like the POV, and then the sparse use of the soundtrack, and also the use of the music to be suspenseful, to actually like mark changes in what's happening in the story and like what's happening in the way that they want you as the player to feel, kind of deal. So
yeah, no, they use the music very sparingly and very particularly, which, you know, really kind of made it atmospheric. And also, I should say, the absence of music was striking as well.
yes.
Yes, I did like the absence of the music a lot. If you look into the credits of this game, you might see some familiar names. This game was created by one Jake Rodkin and one Sean Vanneman, and they were creative leads on The Walking Dead. It was also worked on by Nels Anderson, who was the lead designer of Mark of the Ninja, and an artist named Ollie Moss. And they came together and... Oh, sorry. Yep.
Was that the Walking Dead TV show or video game?
Damn it. I knew you were going to ask that. And as somebody that doesn't consume either of those, I just wrote Walking Dead and forgot to clarify. So I'm not sure.
If anybody really wants it, you can go Google it. Sorry, guys.
Well, I think didn't the writers of the show work with Telltale on the games too?
Yeah. I think they are very similar stories to a certain point, and then they branch or something like that. But like, I think it's pretty much the same core characters and concept. Yeah, so I believe so.
Yeah, so we mentioned the graphics already. They're very cel shady, and I can't remember where I heard this, but somebody, whether it was in person or in writing or on a podcast, they mentioned that like cel shaded graphics are always going to look good. They're kind of like future proof. And I heard that as I was starting this game, and I was like, yeah, I like this. Like, I could play this. I think I told Ben, I think I told you this off mic at some point, but I could play this in like another 5 to 7 years, and it's still going to look good, like really good.
Yeah, and it originally released at E3 in 2015. Or sorry, it previewed at E3 in 2015, so just think about that. That was 6 years ago already, and we're playing it now in 2021. So that's, even now, it looks great. You just pop a little 4K, and then it looks fantastic.
Cell shading, exactly. I think future-proof is a great word for it. If we look at Breath of the Wild, people are still buying it and playing it out the wazoo.
Yep.
And it's not just because it's a Legend of Zelda. It's actually a brilliant game from a game standpoint, but the cell shading is it's never really going to be antiquated, I don't think.
It's a pretty timeless style, and it's pretty much what Nintendo has built its entire platform on, is cell shading. Every Mario 3D platformer, like the Zelda games, Wind Waker, you know what I mean? Like, all that stuff is, those graphics are pretty timeless. Super Mario Galaxy on the Nintendo Wii with like an upscaled cable on a pretty decent TV looks good. Like, it still looks really good.
And you could even go back further. I remember the first cel-shaded game that I ever played was Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2. And they kept...
God.
Oh!
Yeah. And I forgot that was cel-shaded.
They kept that cel shading throughout the rest of the series. Funny story about Budokai.
The one on the GameCube, is this the one you're talking about? Or the one, did you play the one for PS?
So I had these on PS2.
Okay, PS2.
That's when they started the cel shading. I had so my favorite of the series was Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, and it's still regarded as one of the best ones in that series. And I lent it to a friend of mine, and he played it, but he's like, to this day, he's just super irresponsible. We don't talk anymore very much, but he ended up leaving it on, like, paused in his PS2 for literally 3 days, and it burnt the disc so bad that I could never play it again.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Have you taken him to court yet?
I was pretty peeved at the time, and I, like I said, we don't talk anymore, but I would bring it up periodically. He never did, like, apologize for it, but it does make a pretty good story.
Dude, I have it for a Nintendo GameCube if you so desire to play it for that. No takers. Darn.
I'm okay, thanks.
So do you want to talk about how this game plays?
Yes, let's talk about how it plays. Let's go. Let's delve into mechanics once again. So it's a walking sim. It's first person. You just get a little reticle dot, And it's pretty point and clicky type deal. You walk around, you look at something, you pick it up, you put it down. You can keep notes that you find in the overworlds. For what reason? Just to like reference back to. There are mechanics in this game, like you're walking around a forest. So the game is called Firewatch. Okay, I'm getting really jumbled up here. Firewatch. So it takes place in a forest in Shoshone National Forest, which is in Yellowstone National Park. It's a walking sim. You're walking around in, as I already said, and pretty straightforward. You could give the controller to anybody, and they could kind of like work it.
Yeah, it's not an overly complicated game to play. It plays very naturally in the hands. And not to jump ahead, but even, because I know we'll mention this with the story itself, but even the way that they used the tutorial intermittently was very clever and appropriate, I thought, because I know that sometimes those moments, those tutorial moments can really be like, okay, I get it, it's a little bit obvious. But this one, I thought it did that nicely, the way it taught you all the controls, which are obviously different between PC and Switch.
The main thing that bugged me about the mechanics was, thinking about this being a walking sim, immersion is the number one thing that you as a player want to get out of it, and everything mechanically needs to be additive for that to work. The thing that I didn't like is how every action that you complete, from picking something up to observing something to jumping to repelling to breaking locks, it's all done with one button push. And then you watch it play out. This is a pretty tiny gripe, but I do wish the climbing over rocks wasn't just one button push. The breaking of locks wasn't just one button push, and then you watch him kind of hit it with an axe. You know what I mean? I do wish that would have been integrated into the control scheme. It did in those moments. It did take me a little bit out of the immersion.
Yes. Go ahead, Ben. Go.
Oh, I was just going to say that's a what?
Nothing. I said I'll keep my thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, as long as you hold it, baby. No, and not to reference Breath of the Wild again, but in that game, to climb something, you can press a button to climb, but you don't propel yourself over necessarily. So even just a slight dynamic shift of hey, you have to drag the mouse with, pushing a button. Something a little bit more than just boop to move onward. Dynamic control. What were you saying, Vince?
Totally, completely forgot what I was about to say, Ben. Honestly,
you said you were holding it.
It fell through like a spaghetti strainer, buddy. It was gone.
Those are supposed to hold the spaghetti.
The water. I was the water in this metaphor.
Okay.
As Vince mentioned, this takes place in Shoshone National Forest. You do get a map, you get a set of tools, you get a map, you get a compass, you get a flashlight, a camera, and then later on you get something that's important to the story that basically functions as a compass itself too. You can view the entire map from the beginning. Basically, you'll get updates to the map as you find these cache boxes, cache CACHE. Wow, that was a race against my brain to spell that one out.
A supply box.
My brain is still on sleep mode. Yeah, like a supply box. And that'll mark things like other cache boxes, caves, things like that. But you can't see the whole map. It is very large. The only other dissonance that I found in this was that the character, Henry, the character you're playing, you can move pretty quickly across this whole thing. But in the world, that distance is quite long and would be quite tiring and would take probably the entire day. To walk across the entire map would probably take maybe 5 to 7 minutes IRL time. Not super long. Again, that's another super small gripe. And it really didn't bother me until after the game when I started thinking about the various loose threads and open-ended questions, and I don't say that in a negative way, that this game left me with.
Yes, there were a couple questions that I did have regarding some of the different things that happen to characters off screen that we find. There's a lot of you pick up and find things in this game type deal. I also, my gripe with the map that we were talking about before, Rick, I thought that sometimes it was hard to see where specific trails went to. If a road was marked on a map, it was kind of hard to see like where you were supposed to go. Like I knew that I had to go in a general direction, and once I figured it out, it was fine. But then it wound up being just a lot of like walking and then like leaves crunching and me just trying to get to the next destination toward the end of the game. Like I'm glad the game ended where it did, because if I had to walk across that map one more time, I think I would have just not liked it.
Especially as that fire is raging.
Yeah, and that goes back to my one sentence. As long as we're keeping a keen watch, the fires won't burn anything. It's like, oh, go really, like at the end of the game, spoilers alert, like you have to go to like the northernmost point, but like that's so far. Like for an evac, that's so far. It doesn't make any sense.
And that is going to play in handily to a couple of the theories that I have as to what was really going on.
Right. So let's not get all ahead of ourselves now here.
Before we keep going, I did want to just issue a quick warning. If you haven't played this game yet, and you even think you might want to, before you listen to this, if you haven't heard of it, take a second to watch a trailer. But we are going to be liberal with spoilers from here on out, because as we've alluded to, there are some open-ended questions the game does not answer, and we are going to talk about those as they come up organically.
That was a really good spoiler alert, Rick.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome. I really liked that. I thought that was thorough and informative.
Something to add, by the way, to some of the development that I think is worth mentioning is the fact that if the voice, and I've watched The Office like 4 or 5 times, if the voice of Henry sounded familiar to anyone, it was Rich Summer, who is Alex in The Office at art school, where, whenever Pam nearly goes and stays there for forever.
And he's also from Mad Men as well.
Yes.
Love Alex Summer. And I actually looked up the actress for Delilah, the voice actress. Cissy Jones, she's been in like a ton of other video games. She's huge. And she was great in this, honestly. I thought the voice acting in this game was very, very good, very convincing. This is how a lot of the storytelling is told, is through the voice acting. So I'm glad that it really panned out and it works through the walkie-talkie vibe is nice. So.
And there was only like 3 voices that were voice acted? They were all excellent, but I think there were only 3.
Yes.
Technically, yeah.
Only 3. We said spoilers already, so we can spoil things.
Yeah, we're safe.
It's like the dad, right? And then
Ned.
the 2. Oh God. Okay. This story is this one's gonna get me, guys. This is heavy, this game.
Yeah, well, why don't we go ahead and kick it off? Ben, do you want to get us started at the prologue?
I'd be delighted. So it's Boulder, Colorado, 1975 is where we begin in this story. You are Henry, and the very first thing that we read, other than who's produced the game and so forth, is you see Julia. And Julia, as you can probably guess from the very beginning, is Henry's love interest. There are a number of questions with multiple answers that kind of go back and forth, and you go up and ask her at the bar about what year she is, or what is the question exactly? You think she's a student, and she's like, I'm a professor. And it gets real stinky because you, as Henry, are drunk. Hopefully you're not playing the game drunk, or you're probably not going to enjoy it as much. Well, maybe you will. I don't know. Anyway, there's a number of questions that you ask, and I found myself wondering, do they make a legitimate difference in the game, or do they just...
I feel like it's flirting. I feel like it's the questions kind of just get you the same outcome, in my personal opinion.
It's like the beginning of Up, though. You know what I mean? It like
Yes.
it pulls you in, and you're like, oh wow, okay, what's gonna happen? What, her memory? Like, and you just So it basically, not to jump too far there.
You're not jumping anything.
You get a dog together, you talk about kids and all. It's all very sweet and it's very lovey. And then one day, she's sent back from work because she took a job very far away from where you two are located. And it is
Right. Okay, so Ben skipped a couple parts. We flirt with this girl at the bar. We flirt with Julia at the bar, and then we like wind up. It basically skips the text. This is like an old style text simulator game type deal. So we get text options that we pick, and that kind of pushes the story forward.
Yeah, this whole opening prologue, just to make it crystal clear, is just text on a screen. The choices that we're seeing are clickable, and they are separated by like a slash or a line. And by the way, those choices, I don't believe they matter. I have a note here as I started. I was like, do these matter? And I looked it up. I think it's just flavor text, which is fine. It changes the dialogue and stuff. But overall, in this game, the choices aren't going to matter too much outside of dialogue flavor. But it is all just text on a background, and it's really atmospheric and ambient, and it's interspersed with Henry hiking to his eventual lookout tower, which is really, really nice, particularly because I think this opening prologue, the hiking, looks the best it does in the game because they could focus on such small patches, but it works. It really worked for me.
I couldn't agree more. And the story, as you're hiking farther and farther, what I notice is the farther that you have to go upwards, the more elevating the story becomes. Like, the more suspenseful it becomes. Like, you hear him grunting and breathing heavily, and like, it's a lot of sound of like him like panicking, and like you kind of like get the sense of like, where are we going? Like, why are we doing this type deal? It really sets it up really well for you.
And he's also probably pretty out of shape because he's not done this before.
Facts. So we are Henry. Our main character is Henry, like Rick was saying before. And we saw Julia at the bar. We have on our text sim that we, do the whole thing, get a dog, married. One day Julia is at work and she's sent home because she has a psychotic break. She forgets something. I don't exactly remember the specifics. Does anyone remember?
She loses it on a colleague.
Yes.
And
that's right.
Because of this and because of other instances that we get through the sort of slice of life-ish text that we were getting before, Julia goes to the doctor and gets a diagnosis of early onset dementia. At only 41, she gets medical leave at her job because her condition is worsening. And there's not a ton of dialogue that I've written down in this game, but you get the line, some days you get the Julia who calls you a dope and your unborn children little idiots. Other days you get a stranger. And that's like, that will never miss for me. That shit sucks so hard.
Yeah, it's very, very emotionally gripping to, you kind of go, like you go there, it's like Ben said, it's up. You go from, they meet and they're the cutesy little couple who's having a picnic on a hill, and then one of them is dying, like in the course of like 3 minutes, and it's just very jarring. It's very gripping, and it pulls you in. It makes you care about who Henry is, and it also makes you sympathetic toward Henry. That's a really, really important point. But then as the story goes on, you can kind of make your own decision about who Henry is.
It eventually gets so bad that you have the option in the flavor text to either send her to a facility or take care of her at home full time. I didn't actually look up the differences in this or if they are different. I did the latter. But it continues to detail this sort of struggle because this is something that is wreaking havoc not just on Julia's professional life, but on both of your personal lives as well. Henry's not able to enjoy most things anymore. It really highlights this in a sort of like, this destroys a lot of lives kind of way, not just one person on either side.
Right.
But the crux of it is you get a DUI, and then Julia's parents come and take her with them because your house is a wreck. That's when you take this job. And alcohol actually plays a huge part in this story. All throughout the flavor text in the beginning, when you're dating, you're drinking. Once she gets the diagnosis, you begin drinking alone. There's a lot of alcohol use in the story. It is a very interesting theme that I think would be worthwhile to talk about maybe later on in the game.
I would agree. And that's just it. You make all of these decisions with this flavor text, as you called it. And no matter what, no matter how often you could go back and try different decisions, you're going to get the same result with her. And it's heartbreaking every time. So it really plunges you into that. So after all of this text, you find yourself climbing your tower, your Firewatch tower, for the first time. You turn the power on, and you pick up to the voice of Delilah, who kind of starts, dare I say, lightly harassing you off the bat.
Right. She calls Twin Forks Tower, which is your tower. There are a bunch of other Firewatch towers, so you assume that she, like, based off of that there are a bunch of other ones because yours has a specific name. Yeah, and as Ben was saying, she does start to, like, harass you. She's like, do you do this? Did you do this? Like, you need to make sure that you're checking this type deal. And it's very quick dialogue. You pretty quickly learn the controls to the dialogue meter to speak to her over the radio. I'm using the 2 triggers if you're using a controller. You kind of have to go. I was snapping in case anyone did not hear on the microphone. You kind of have to go faster than the bar depletes. It's time sensitive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There are timed responses, and you can choose not to respond at all, too. I mean, that's an option.
You can just never. Yeah, there was actually one time where I stopped to check my phone for like 1 second, and then Delilah was talking to me for like a couple instances, and I was like, oh my God, there were dialogue options.
So
Shit.
I would be interested, not to divert from the story this early, but I'd be interested, how did you guys play your Henry? For me, I was going through this, like, I would not talk about Julia to Delilah at all. I was kind of standoffish. I would not respond to her flirting. And eventually his anger just kind of turned into, like, paranoia towards the end, you know? And my favorite part was when she asks to draw you in an upcoming scene because she can see you. That's also a very important part to know. But I told her that my eyes were sad. And when you see the drawing eventually, it's the most pathetic looking thing. Not in terms of her being a bad drawer, but like, man, she captured a depressed looking alcoholic for sure.
What drawing? Oh, the drawing in the ending scene on her desk.
Yeah.
Yeah, that drawing. Okay. So,
but yeah, how did you guys play your Henry?
Okay, I played my Henry pretty middle of the road to nice. I was pretty nice to Delilah. I told her about Julia. I flirted back with her. We were very friendly. All of this stuff wasn't actually paranoia. It was more concern. Like, she was very concerned all the time, which was actually like very sweet. I thought my Delilah played out like very sweetly.
Yeah, my relationship with Delilah was not so different from yours. I don't want to say that I flirted terribly much, but I was at least as pleasant as I could be and tried to make a lot of sound choices in my interactions with her. But isn't one of the options the eyes are tired? I think it's steely, tired, and sad. So,
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. I played it closer to how I would play it, in real life, dare I say.
Yeah, cool. I was just curious. Again, it doesn't really affect anything in the story, but it's fun on these little role-playing things to hear how other people did it.
Yes, I really like that point of discussion, Rick, because that actually does remind me that I wanted to talk about it's like a basic 3-tree dialogue system. You can pick like a positive, a neutral, or like a negative type deal. So you can like either trust Delilah, or like the positive, you can be neutral toward Delilah and not really share anything, but also not be mean to her. Or you can just be like mean and paranoid and pick the renegade options, basically, if I want to speak in Mass Effect. And you can be big evil toward Delilah and not trust her and be mistrusting. So it's your big three. So you pick up the radio, you're talking to Delilah, and this game is divided into days. We learn very quickly. Yeah, it's we get there at nighttime. We are talking to her on the radio. She's giving us like basic directions. How do we turn on our lights? Where's our cabin? Check. And then we have to call in and see if there are any fires. So we learn how to call in when we get that little call in notification.
Yeah. And each of these days, there are a total of 79 days. You're not going to play each one. There are occasional skips in time when it's relevant. But you do get an option after you beat the game to just play a free explore mode. So if you wanted more of that, you could certainly do that. Which, going back to Ben's earlier point, I could see having a few beers and doing that and feeling pretty relaxed.
Yeah, it's nice to just walk around, hear the music. You can see some squirrels and shit.
Oh, a few beers is one thing.
That's true. But as Vince said, you do get there at nighttime. You end up sleeping for 14 hours and resume the job the next day in the evening time because there are some jerks that are setting off fireworks, and you have got to go give them what for.
That's right.
Yeah, you find there's like a ton of alcohol, there's fireworks, there's a campfire that you need to put out. And interestingly enough, there is abandoned clothing, implying that there are nude women running around. So
right.
Suddenly we're in 80s horror territory.
And this whole time you're kind of calling these things into Delilah. You call in the alcohol, you call in their little campfire, like you talk to her through this whole process. So she's vicariously speaking to you through this, and Henry is kind of giving his verbal opinions about what he feels to Delilah. You can kind of take a stance on what your Henry is through this whole situation. So you get these dialogue options. You talk to Delilah about these little minute tasks, and then you kind of just like follow this trail of clues down to Jonesy Lake. We go down to the shore of Jonesy Lake, and we find two women swimming in the lake, and they're like, "Hey, creep, what are you doing?" And you like try to yell at them, and you're like, "Hey, you can't set off your fireworks." And they're like, yeah, whatever, yeah, and they like pretend like not to hear you, and he's like very submissive. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to say I actually have a note here that says like 80s horror teen vibes.
Correct.
Because they're like yelling at you like, "You're so bogus. Let's get out of here." And it's like, oh my God, am I playing Friday the 13th Part 2? What is happening?
Yeah, well, it does take place in 1989. We did.
Yes,
I don't know if we mentioned that.
Yeah. Sorry, Ben, do you want to keep going?
No, I was just commenting that yes, it is in fact 1989.
We were just at... Sorry, Ben. We just got to Jonesy Lake, and where are we now? We saw the ladies of the lake, and then what happens after the ladies of the lake?
Well, one more thing before day 2. I'm sorry, Ben. I don't mean to cut you off. On the way back, Delilah she tells you she has a confession to make. When you get back, your lookout's been broken into. And what we didn't mention was that you did see a strange figure on your way back to the lookout. You're coming across a cave that is sort of blocked off, and there is a man that's like standing up on the cliffs. You tell Delilah, and she's like, "Yeah, this is the outdoors. People walk around out here." But Delilah never makes good on this confession. You know, after you mention the creepy guy, she says like, "Yes, the confession was this is the outside and people are allowed to come and go as they please." But that's not convincing to me. This confession, and this is just in retrospect, I didn't think this during the first playthrough. This confession being avoided is like a huge red flag to me. Like, spoiler alert, I think Delilah is in on this whole thing. I think she's a big liar. And I think she is deliberately playing you for whatever reason. I haven't figured that out yet. But I just wanted, Ben, before you picked it up at day 2, I wanted to feel that because I don't remember that confession being made. I remember it being brushed off after Henry mentioned the stranger. But yeah, that plays a big part. I think Delilah's a big liar.
Damn, dude, that's a lot to unpack. Okay, so...
Oh, we'll get
I
there.
disagree. We will get there, but I do disagree with you. But I do want to talk about that.
Yeah, Ben, do you want to pick it up at day 2?
I'm fine to do so. Did I miss the part that we threw their radio into the water and that's why they're pissed and that's why the vandalism happened? Because I thought we skipped over.
You didn't miss it. We didn't touch on it. You don't have to throw the radio in the water.
Yeah, I didn't do that.
I did just because I thought it's funny. You could also take it with you, and Delilah will complain that it's too loud and she can't hear you over the walkie-talkie. But
see, I just left it. I took the beer. You can like take their beer. You can take their fireworks. Well, actually, yeah, you can take their fireworks, like other shit like that. But
their supplies are a point of contention, which is what at least what I believe, leads to the vandalism that happens to your tower.
Yes,
because that is what we go back to.
And that's certainly what Henry thinks. You can say maybe it was the creepy guy, maybe it was the teens because we took their beer and stuff, or you could say like, I don't know. But yes, that is one line of possibility. It could have been the teens. But that does end day one. You kind of tidy up and go to sleep because it's nighttime.
Delilah calls you. She calls to wake you up. A storm has apparently knocked down the phone lines, and naturally, it's your job to investigate. At least she has theorized that the storm has knocked down the lines. So you have to go back through. You went through this weird cave on your way to your tower after day one, and you go back through this cave to find your way to the line. And it's at this point that, Rick, you were talking about early on about talking, and as were you, Vince, about talking to Delilah about Julia. And so this is the beginning of, dare I say, Delilah's nebbiness about Julia.
Right, so this is now our day 2, and Delilah is trying to get to know us a little better, and she asks about Julia. It's like, hey, who's Julia? What's up with Julia? And you can give her an answer. You can be very vague, or you can tell her to mind her own business, or you can tell her who Julia is. And I chose to do like a mix of telling her and being vague. What about you, Rick?
I played this whole game as like Henry came to this tower to get away from all of his problems, whether it was like alcohol or his deteriorating relationship with Julia. So I just did not talk about anything.
Interesting. Okay. Ben?
I told her a little bit, but I really was more empathic. I mean, perhaps one could say that there was a slight flirtatious vibe, but I didn't go hard in the paint, as it were. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay, that's interesting. So three different viewpoints on that. Yeah, super different. So you're walking along. You're trying to find the end of these phone lines, and this entire way you're talking to Delilah on the radio. As you're walking in the walking sim type deal, talking to Delilah takes up most of the time. They try to pace it so that when you're doing most of the walking, you can talk to her. But like sometimes it falls short, sometimes it's too long. It just depends. But yeah, you have this whole dialogue with her as you're walking along trying to find this broken phone line. And
as we're walking, we get, and this is in the game where I said something is fishy here. Delilah accidentally leaves the walkie-talkie on as she's talking to somebody, which she says is a work call. The dialogue is vague, but it's something like, yeah, I don't think he has any idea. Let me know if that changes. Here's the thing. The communication lines are down, right? So this is not going to be any kind of work call. She's talking to somebody, right? And I think that this is a certain somebody that we will meet later on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm
really
thinking
do.
the same. Interesting. I don't know if I'm thinking the same person that you're thinking.
It's largely the line, I don't think he has any idea. The communication lines are down, so she can't be talking to anybody except the other lookouts, which she
Unless
says
someone's
that
in the tower.
Or somebody could be in the tower. That's actually, certainly possible. But she says that it's just a work call. She just deflects everything. She says, like, this is none of your business. Why are you acting up? Et cetera, et cetera. And then she steps away from the walkie-talkie because she gets mad at you for asking.
Yes.
Another big red flag.
That's, yeah.
There was a situation where you get a dialogue option for her boyfriend. that I think I partially attributed it to that because her and her boyfriend had broken up. And her boyfriend was another one of the lookouts, which we found out later. Go ahead, Rick.
No, I was going to say we do learn later that she like kind of cut contact with him, supposedly.
Yes. Right. So I would assume he was at some sort of ranger or something like that, like there, not ranger or lookout or something. So, she gets upset, steps away from the walkie, and you're exploring. You're looking for the end of this cable, and you find the end of the cable, and it has not been downed. It's been cut, sliced. Slice.
That's right, everybody. And there's, I believe, a pair of underwear there that have some choice words for you.
Yeah.
What does the underwear say again?
They say "go to hell."
And with a smiley face too.
Yeah, so because we see these and because we see the beer cans, we are conditioned to think, okay, the teens did this.
That's right.
I don't know if I want to go full conspiracy right now, but how in the world are these teens, one, going to navigate the woods faster than we are and get there quicker? Two, how are they going to have the tools to do this without getting electrocuted and dying? Like, things are just starting to not add up.
3, they did not have very many clothes with them. It really was like it doesn't add up at all. So like at this point we're like, this is definitely not them, and we're a little sussied. I was at this point pretty sussied about everybody when I saw the cable line cut, and that Delilah had sent us up there because she conveniently knew that it was cut in our specific area. You know, like that was also another thing. There's this conversation that we could have between like moving the game plot along, because in our overworld the wire has to be cut somewhere to move the game along, or it's the fact that Delilah knew, and we don't really know. We don't really have an answer to that question.
So moving along a little bit, you see smoke from a campfire. This is not good because obviously everything's too dry, so you got to go and snuff it out. Two things that excited me here. One, the music started back up when you're exploring. This is the first time that I actually noted it, and I was like, I love this. I love the punctuation. 2, you get to explore Pando. You guys know about Pando?
Of course
yes.
I know about Pando.
I love Pando. I was not expecting to, like... I forgot that where we were, like, in the game, and then Delilah was like, yeah, this forest is one organism. And I was like, it's Pando!
It is Pando. And yeah, I like got really hype. I was like, no fucking way is Pando in Shoshone, and sure enough, it is. It's in Shoshone.
I just love that.
It's also worth mentioning, if I'm not mistaken, on your way to finding this fire and finding Pando, while traversing, you can find a cable car, and she tells you that it's how you get to her sector, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
I didn't find that.
Really?
You can divert to the cable car, but like it's an unmarked map path that you don't get until later in the game from a supply cache. So you could like accidentally stumble upon it, but it just pretty elegantly like brushes you off. Pretty much like cave.
She's like, no, you don't want to.
Like the cave, pretty much. It's just like the cave is locked. Don't try. You know.
Yeah, I can't do that. You know, and it's rarely used and so forth. And don't you also find that hanging pack at this point?
Yes, we find a hanging pack on the way to the campsite with some rope in it. So this now gives us unlimited rope access.
And
to rappel down shit and bend. And what else is our audience won?
The disposable camera.
Disposable camera that I forgot to use for the entire game. Go ahead, Ben.
And no, it's all good. The bag apparently belonged to a Brian Goodwin, who was she does say was very quickly, was a 12-year-old boy stationed with his dad Ned in the area a few years ago, but the job wasn't good for Brian, she postulates.
She says this must have been Brian Goodwin's pack, and then you confirm that.
I can't remember if it's here that we learn this, but at some point, whether it's here or a little later, we learn that Ned was a former lookout, and Brian is his son. And the reason Brian was there is because Delilah looked the other way. She didn't report that Ned brought his son, which is wildly irresponsible, and really makes you question. It confirms for me either, one, Delilah is in a position of responsibility that she is not equipped for, or 2, there was a special relationship between her and Ned that was more than just superior and lookout.
I did not consider I did not consider cahoots with Daddy until right now. Did you, Ben?
I know.
I think it's a little of both.
Interesting. We don't know how old
daddy.
Delilah is.
Listen, I'm Delilah pilled on this, dude. I'm so Delilah pilled. Like
I think I'm Henry pilled. I think I'm Henry pilled.
She's
honestly.
having an affair with her daddy?
No, Ben.
Wait,
no, Ben. No, no, she's not. Ben. Delilah.
I know.
Oh, okay.
We find the campfire, and we snuff it out, but the campsite has been ravaged. We find our sheets, so this seems to point to the girls breaking into our tower. Everything is ravaged, and they left a note. And again, this is like complete with 80s like
it's like
horror
Dear
film
Psycho.
Dear Psycho, yeah. But they think that you ravaged their site. They say they're going to call the whoever on you. So basically, somebody, it seems, is trying to frame you, or it could have been like an animal, and they just thought you did it for some reason. Again, also, how could they have gotten to this campsite, built the campfire, left, and had everything get destroyed after cutting the comm wire, all before you got to it? So this is another thing where it's like things are not adding up, and I don't think it's just because this is a video game. I think this wasn't intentional.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like, they had to either have extreme forestry skills or be like pretty good with this stuff, and I feel like eventually this irons itself out and at this point in the story it is very suspenseful. I was suspensified. I was like, and you kind of forget that you've only been in the game for 2 days, technically. You're very immersed.
Those first 2 days are long boys.
So the next couple of days fly past pretty quickly. Delilah on day 3 is just asking about your features. She says she's drawing you because, again, she can see you from her tower, and I guess she has better binoculars. Or wait, no. Sorry, scratch that. Delilah is asking about your features because she cannot see you. She has just seen you from her tower as you were walking. She just knows that you are white and wear shorts, I believe is the other one. And you get to pick and choose here. You get to see the drawing towards the end. Nothing else really happens. It's, again, just building flavor, world building, ambiance, that kind of thing. We jump to day 9. The girls are missing, the 2 girls from the camp. This is not good, particularly because we don't know who wrecked their tent, and they thought it was you, and it wasn't you.
Oh, I was just going to say, and this was like a day 3 thing. With the boards, I actually liked that fetch quest. That was literally all I was going to say, because it was a practical fetch quest, and you didn't have to go too far. That's literally it. Please continue with it.
Yeah, we glossed over that. You have to board up the broken window from that first night, so you board up your broken window, and you're on your merry way to day 9. So Rick went to day 9. Day 15, we get out of bed, we pick up the radio, and we have this weird kind of dream sensation where we are talking to Julia. Freudian slip. We are talking to Delilah, and by proxy, we are talking to Julia in this dream. We share our intimate thoughts and feelings with Julia. We tell her that we miss her type deal. She tells us that she misses us type deal. It's very clearly a dream. Like, I wasn't like, oh, this is real. Like, it was just out of the blue, out of nowhere, and it was in this, like, cutscene montage, so.
See, and this was one of those moments where, like, I've not read any theories. I've developed my own, and sometimes I look at this and I'm like, what is the catch? Because it starts with Delilah saying, pick up the radio, Henry. Henry, come pick up the radio, and you do. And then you hear Julia's voice, and I'm just sitting here going, like, it gives me the willies, and I don't know what to believe. So, like, I'm really excited for you both to keep interspersing your theories about this, and it doesn't play like a dream though. Though it could be.
From this point on, Henry does get the hots for Delilah, and you get to if you choose, you can pick those romancy options for her. So,
Yeah, so it does jump after this to day 33, and speaking of the romance options, Delilah asks about Jules, because turns out day 15, you called her in your sleep and started talking to her as if she was Julia. In my playthrough, just speaking on the romance thing, I just made Henry get super defensive about it. I ended up snapping at her, because we're not going to talk about Julia, because that is a tender topic.
I just kind of admitted and said I was sorry, kind of deal. And she said it was sweet and vulnerable. It was kind of nice moment.
The one last little flavor thing before day 64 comes along, Ben, is this is where you get your cash boxes for the first time, or not cash boxes, but like a supply box for the first time, I believe. There are other lookouts supplies in there, and you do have the ability to take them. I ended up not taking them. I don't know if that actually impacts anything.
I only took my own when I hiked north.
I took my own as well. I was hoping one of you guys would have taken all three, and we could have figured out what happens, but
no, I couldn't. I will say that on day 33, this is whenever Delilah tells you about Javier.
Yes, her boyfriend.
Oh, is that day 33?
Yep.
Yes, it is.
Got it. Okay.
And Javier apparently broke up with Delilah after his brother died, or so she tells you, because I don't know what to believe of her. But that's what she says, and you get the sense, at least it's painted this way, that she is confiding in you. And the thing that she says is, and I don't know if she's talking about you and Javier, or if she's talking about you and she, but she says we both fucked up, which makes me go, wait, who is she? Who are the two people that we both effed up this way? Like, I don't.
I think that's maybe one of those open interpretation lines where, like, it's one of those things you say when you broke up with someone and, like, it's just over for good kind of deal, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know if that's meant to be read into in terms of, like, the grand over story, if that's what you're implying. Is that what you're implying, or?
I'm implying, like, is she trying to say that, you know what, we both have made our mistakes, or if she's trying to say that he and I made a mistake? Because it doesn't sound like they did. It sounds like in the wake of the death of his brother, he decided to go a different way.
I kind of, just because my playthrough Henry wasn't talking about Julia, and Delilah says at the outset, like, people come here whenever they, like, fucked up or whenever they're dumped or something. I just took it as, like, you know, you and I, we both lost our relationships kind of thing. But that was just because I didn't talk about Julia.
That's fair.
Okay, that's very interesting. So you got a little bit of a different experience because you didn't talk about Julia.
Yeah, it's true.
All right, so we are at day 64 now?
I believe that's where we are.
So this is basically a skippable that these days happen in, like, very short cutscene, interactable cutscene things, and I like this way of progressing story. We do see, like, the slow passage of time. We see them connecting. Like, this is meant to just give us meatier character development so that we care about Delilah, and we care about Henry, and we care about, like, we give a shit about what their lives and their relationship, and, like, their summer friends. It's happy. It's fun. It's quirky. It's free. You know.
So I
they're
just
confiding
want to
in
pitch
each
in.
other.
I want to pitch in the counterpoint that I don't think this is skippable, and here's why. So
No, I didn't say it was skippable.
Did you?
I heard the word skippable.
No. I didn't meant that I skipped it. No, I didn't meant that it's skippable. Did I say the word skippable?
This word skippable left your mouth, yes.
Okay, then No,
Okay.
skippable. Sorry.
I was going to say, this is a big boy.
No, I didn't skip a single second of it. Did
Ben,
I say skippable?
I will go to court and tell everyone.
Holy shit, I got to get my brain checked.
We all do that, buddy. It's okay.
Ben, do you want to
all
tell
right.
us why this is a big boy?
Why? What? Day 64 is a big boy?
Yeah, you said it was a big boy.
I just think it's a big boy. Large fire in the distance, right? And we're given, because that's basically what we're looking at. We're like, wow. And she's like, that's going to be burning for a long time. You kind of name the fire with Delilah, which to be honest, I chose the Flapjack Fire as the title. And then from that point on, the rest of the game, in the very severe text that they do everything in, you just see the Flapjack Fire. And, like, I don't know why that made me laugh every time. What did you guys name your fires? Because there was the Flapjack, there was the Delilah, and then there was, what was it? The Big Fire.
My Henry, I was like, this guy's in emotional turmoil, and he doesn't have the mental capacity to be creative. So I was like, it's the Big Fire.
Yeah.
Because it's big.
I said that too, and then it turns into the June Fire. No, my fire was called the June Fire.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe I didn't pick Big. Maybe I picked Delilah. I think I picked Delilah actually, and then it gave me June, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, I got June. It's not really a game breaking.
Well, maybe you skipped it, and that's why it named it the June Fire.
No, or maybe I did actually skip that.
Sorry.
You watch this with her, and it's kind of set up as this kind of like a romantic scene.
Like you're looking at the sunset from two separate like places, and it's like, I'm watching this with you, you know?
Yeah, it's romance through destruction. It definitely feels like a romantic moment for two broken people, which is really what you both are. And you have the option again to flirt with her. I mean, she flirts with you. I did not take the bait again. It just didn't feel right.
Rick, as long as we're keeping a keen watch, the fires won't burn anything. I fucking told you, buddy. The one sentence does it again. A knockout in the 9th inning or round or whatever.
This is good. This is really good.
I'm never gonna use my. Well, all right, listen. We're playing BioShock. And I keep getting my mid-century Atlantic voice out, and I really shouldn't. It needs to
You
stay.
sound like a carnival barker.
I know, it's terrible.
Yeah, jeez, I thought I was on the set of Carousel for a second.
That's right.
Anyway, thank you. Anyways, Delilah does say one key bit of information. This is the big boy that Ben was referring to, I think. Delilah says that she likes you more than the other lookouts. This becomes important on the next day.
Correct.
It does. I also want to throw in, she does talk about chilling alcohol using the creek water, which I found to be kind of interesting. Because of the
that's important too.
The undertone of the alcohol that keeps showing up. I find that to be curious.
We do learn later, quote unquote, learn that she is an alcoholic.
Yeah, deep conversation. I'm glad you're here. I wish I was over there. What could we do? And then it literally goes to the next day, and you're like,
she says, well, talk to me about it. And then it goes to the next day, and you assume that they sexted all night over their little 1989 walkies.
Type 3 boops for, oh, baby.
I was trying to think of a relevant 1989 reference that I couldn't.
I'm just picturing her like looking at the picture that she drew of me with the sad, horribly bloated and depressing eyes and face. Yikes.
Yikes is right. So, day 64 has come to a conclusion. You guys ready to wrap this boy?
I think so.
Yeah, day 64 has come to a conclusion, and we are now on day 76. We skip ahead a couple more days. And we are now tasked by Delilah to hike west to find the teens' tracks, because they are now missing. So
there's also a bear, I think, right?
There's bear tracks.
Yes, there's bear tracks. So we have to track down the teens. There's a bear afoot. There is evil, and we are tasked to find them.
Can I say that day 76 opens with her saying the line, "You're going fishing without a license"? Like that's, you literally go from like hot and heavy on day 64 to day 76. You're going fishing without a license. That, I don't know why that made me laugh.
Ben, that's an actual real innuendo, Ben. That's why it made you laugh. That's very funny.
Probably, yeah.
If you want to get real like Alex Jones, but in a cool, non-harmful way about this, Delilah is really like, you're going fishing without a license? Like, now she knows the rules. Later on, she literally tells us to blow up a building, but we'll get there.
Yes.
Inconsistencies.
In 2 hours, Delilah. Okay, so it's day 76. We're tracking down the teens. So we have to go to where the teens' first campsite was on day 1. And we talk about the problem bear with Delilah. So we reach the shore of the lake, and what we find on the shore of the lake is a clipboard sitting on a rock. And what the clipboard describes, it says on it, 63189-2F day 64. So it actually describes the number of days that you have been there on this clipboard, on this piece of paper. There are letters IDing D and H, obviously standing for Delilah and Henry. Well, not obviously, but we infer that they stand for Delilah and Henry because the dialogue is real radio dialogue that they had been using, that they had been talking to each other about. So Henry finds us on the shore, and Ben, how does Henry feel about finding this clipboard on the shore of this fucking lake?
Henry gets kind of, he is shooketh, as it were. Finds the radio. It's a red radio, right? That he finds also. So he's got
not just a radio, a walkie-talkie.
Yeah, it's a red walkie-talkie, and he picks it up, and you look at it for a second, and I won't call this a jump scare, but I love a moment like this.
Oh, it scared the shit out of me.
You get...
Yeah, me too. Honestly, fair. It did. Yeah.
Well, that's just it. It really like grabbed me and shook me, and it was very. My reaction was kind of visceral. I don't want to say jump scare. I was slightly startled, but it was more like what they did with the sound effects and with the camera. It really made me feel as though I was slugged to the ground, which is exactly what has happened to Henry. You get punched out.
You're right. You pick up the walkie, and then you're immediately slugged. You hit the ground, and then we wake up.
Henry relays to Delilah that the words Wapiti Station, after a while, she says that, or Wapiti. I don't know how to actually say it.
Yeah, I think it's Wapiti.
I'm trying to think about, if this is a real thing, how it would actually be. But anyway, that was what was written on the radio. And so this is whenever Delilah tells you about a certain region with a similar name, correct?
Yes, Wapiti Station. So and Wapiti Meadow in return. So she tells you about Wapiti Meadow, and you start to make your way north up the trail from Jonesy Lake to Wapiti Meadow. Very directional based game. So you're using your compass a lot. We will use many directions. I like directions for this game. I feel like that's a better way to describe things.
Yeah, it totally works, and it was less. Not difficult, but it was less tedious than I was expecting. But after you wake up, you're exploring, you come across an area that's completely fenced off, like Area 51 style fenced off, like it's a big fence. You can't get through. So you have to trek back to find the folks that are doing the controlled burn, the fire people, to get some tools. Delilah also... notably, Delilah supposedly has no idea that this exists. You tell her and she's like, I had no idea that's up there. What the fuck is going on?
Right, super but she's secret. Supposed to be... It seems like, number one, she's your superior, so it's very shady to me that she doesn't know about that. And number two, she's worked there longer than you. Number three, Rick, you said fire people?
Yeah.
Do you not use the term firefighter?
I just wrote down fire people. I don't know.
What's
firefighter? We can't use
Rick. This is a pro-war innuendo podcast, Rick. We use the term firefighter. We're fighting for our freedom.
Hold on a second. I think firefighter is great, and I think using fighter as the latter term is good. I mean, like fisherman. No, fisher fighter. That's what they should be. Well, and then policeman. No, it's a police fighter.
Ben, you're not trying to catch the fire the same way you're not trying to fight the fish.
No, you bet your ass I'm trying to fight the fish. What the hell you think I'm doing? God damn, Vince.
Okay, so we're trying to find the firefighters, and to get to the firefighters, we have to go south of the Ruby River, which is now south of Two Forks Lookout, which takes us from, in case anyone's keeping track, the northwesternmost point of the map to the southeasternmost point of the map, which, as Rick said, by the time you get the hang of it, takes about 5 to 7 minutes, but it looks more intimidating on there. So we find ourselves at Camp Arapahoe, which is like an abandoned camp in the southwest corner below the Ruby River. And we do not find our firefighters, but what we do find is one of those firefighter axes, which is called I don't remember. It's called something. Delilah tells us very cheekily.
I just called it the axe.
Yeah, it's the big red axe. I don't know. So we get our big red axe, and then she's like, okay, great, head back up to Two Forks. And then we get a little cutscene, and then it just brings us to day 77. It brings us to the next day.
Not quite. On the way back, somebody coughs on the radio line.
That's right.
And you're like, was that you? And then she's like, no, was that you? And then, you realize that somebody is on your wavelength. She frantically tells you to just get back to your tower. Don't come out. Don't use the radio. Like, she'll call you whenever it's time to talk. This also becomes important. Also,
yes.
Vince, just so you know, I didn't just write fire people. I wrote fire folk.
Wow.
I refer to them as fire folk.
But Rick, I think firefolk is superior to firefighters. So you have bested me. What can I say?
Them sound significantly more of the earth than they are. Maybe, I don't know.
More of the
fire
earth,
folk, whatever.
The folk of the earth. Okay, so we wake up on day. Ben, do you want to take over day 77?
Day 77, you say?
Yes, day 77.
So it's the morning, right? And you're
Yes.
sitting there and you're like, I've called you for the 50th time, Dalurler. Where are you? That's not what you sound like at all, because Rich Summer does a great job. Rich Summer sounds like he makes a lot of money.
No,
during
Ben,
the
this is
warmest
the
months
morning
of the year.
with the poster.
Yes, no, I know that. I know.
Oh,
I'm just
okay,
being
okay.
silly about Rich Summer.
I've called. I called you 50 times.
Yeah, he says, I called you 50
Dalurler.
times, Dalurler. And she eventually makes an appearance, and she's like, hey, how's it going there? And your character's like, literally, what the actual hell? Where have you been? I've been trying to call you. And she's like, it's a beautiful day, isn't it? And you're like, the hell it is, Delilah. I don't believe in beauty. And she's getting really chummy. And then she eventually is like, yeah, so you have a foliage chart in your Firewatch tower. And I want you to go study the upper left-hand side most tree and look at your map, and you're going to find something that has this particular thing in its title, and I want you to go there. And I think that she's doing this as to not alert the people who listen, or at least that's what she's trying to make you think. Because this game has made me think so much that like I feel like I'm kind of spinning in circles sometimes. But yeah, she does it very much in a way like if anyone is listening, you're not going to know where you're going.
I don't know, Ben. I feel like now that you bring it up, the way that she does speak about this is very like, it's what's a movie?
Throwing people off your trail, right?
No, it's like any one of those dystopian type movies where like there is no war in Ba Sing Se type deal. Like she puts on that very like plasticky facade voice, and it's almost too good.
You saw her faking it to you, is what you thought.
Yes, yeah. When you see her faking it to you, I was like, oh shit, she was faking it to me. She could have just been faking it the whole time because like it was just really believable how much she didn't give a fuck about the tone of your voice. So, she tells you to go to. Rick, go.
So you're going to Cottonwood Creek is where you're going.
That's the tree.
The Cottonwood Creek. And she changed the code on the cash box to give you a new walkie-talkie because she surmises that somebody has tapped into your walkie-talkie. Two things that I want to posit to you boys before we move on. I'm gonna spout my whole theory towards the end, but here's the thing. One, you have to go south from your tower to get to this cash box to get the new walkie-talkie. For Delilah to put it there, she would have had to walk past your tower. If that's the case, why did she do that? And why did she say just stay in your tower, don't come outside, don't use the radio? Two, walkie-talkies don't work that way. I mean, anybody that's used a walkie-talkie before knows that they just work on frequencies and you can't tap into that. Like anybody that has a walkie-talkie can surf the frequencies, and if two people are using a frequency, anybody that has access to that can pick it up. It's not walkie-talkie dependent. It's not like a cell phone.
Right, so you can just scan the frequencies over like a very short band and just pick it up. Like it's not terribly hard to hear on radios. Yeah.
So why did she go through all of this trouble?
Unless they were on like a weird CB band, but they were not.
I was just going to say, one of my friends and I used to we had our own walkie-talkies and we would call each other. But of course, it's sharing a frequency, which about anybody can track. I mean, my dad used to sit on the front porch every night with a Yingling or a Milwaukee's Best, and he would just put on his police scanner, and you bet your bottom dollar he knew everything that was going on in Washington County. But I will say, Rick, the only thing, and this is really not much of a challenge to your theory, but she does say that she has arranged for you to pick up this new walkie-talkie there. Whether that's her saying that she did it herself or she had somebody else come out and do it, that's its own thing. But I do want to say she's like, I did have the code changed to the cash box. And you're like, oh, wow, what is it? And she's like, it's 5, 6, 7, 8. And all of the other ones have been 1, 2, 3, 4.
But here's the thing with that, though, is that if she's arranging for somebody to do this, then she's going to have to tell them why, right? She's going to say, oh, yeah, somebody's spying on our walkie-talkies. And
who would she tell?
Right, who would she tell? But even if she did tell somebody, they're going to either say, okay, let's investigate this, or they're going to say, you have an entire radio set up. You know that's not how walkie-talkies work. So one of those two things are going to happen. So that led me to believe it was her.
Or it could have been, third option, or whatever option this is now, it could have just been that she got another ranger to just, or another watch member to just do a favor and just drop another walkie for somebody who had lost their walkie and dropped it or something and broken it. Or it could have been like the fact that like this is some kind of universe where the walkie-talkies are operating in some sort of dumb secure channel. So in terms of world building and continuity, do we buy that?
Well, yes, because this takes place on Earth in Washington. Washington, Colorado. I'm not very good at the Northwest states.
I think it's
Montana.
Wyoming.
Wyoming.
Yeah.
But I do believe it was somebody else that dropped it off, but we'll get there. Where are we here? Coming back up to Meadow Station, you're going back up there. You were able to break in with the axe that you picked up at
From the scout camp.
Quote, Firefolk Station. And you find nestled in the valley, away from the eyes of all the lookouts, there's a bunch of this advanced comm equipment. Stuff to track various frequencies, stuff to monitor the soil, and something that we glossed over because it hasn't been important until now is that there are scientists that are scheduled to come and do testing on like the soil, the wildlife, etc. from August 15th to October 15th. Those dates are also important. But this equipment shouldn't be surprising because we're aware that scientists will be coming, and ecologists, or whatever the proper terminology is.
Right. So you put in the call to Delilah to say that you're at this like monitoring station. You find about a 20-foot radio tower. You call into her about that, and you say, I don't know who these people are, but they have some pretty serious comms equipment. You kind of talk about how technologically advanced their big tent is. They have a bunch of equipment in there, and the main piece of equipment that you can interact with this tent is called the wave receiver. Mm-hmm. And this is how Henry and Delilah theorize that the people that have been spying on them have actually done the channeling down of their radio frequency to figure out which frequency their walkies are on. Also very, very, very important in this tent, if you turn around and go back to the end of the tent, you find a lot of papers that document you and Delilah and your behavior.
Yeah, you find like they're like dossiers. And I think they comment on your playstyle because I didn't feel like I was like super sticking to the path, but I didn't like go exploring through paths that weren't marked. But it did say stuff like, oh, he keeps to the trail and he's, whatever and whatever. So that was a nice little touch. But yes, it's set up to show that somebody is apparently spying on you. Delilah doesn't like this at all. And she suggests burning down the entire campsite.
That's right.
The Firewatch captain or boss is suggesting you start a fire. Again, this leaves a lot of questions, but I don't know if you...
I got a quote, Rick. Actually, can I...
Oh, sure.
And what do you suppose we do after we set this camp on fire? And then there's just an ellipses, and Delilah says, I guess we call it in. And that's like... it's just like a very cold... Like, it seems like she really doesn't give a shit about... The whole point that she's there is to make sure that there are not fires and put out fires kind of deal. She gets very ill-tempered very quickly.
Well, and that happens too, because as you're running back, a bridge collapses that you're on, And as you climb up and get your footing and turn around, somebody has already burnt down the entire site behind you. And the way Delilah frames this is, okay, they have us on air saying that we're going to burn it down. Now it's burnt down. What are we going to do? Delilah also at this point, I believe it's at this point, starts talking about how she doesn't want to talk to the cops. That's not her deal. Or maybe she said it like earlier in the game. But anyways, Delilah does not trust the police at all.
Doesn't trust the police. We make it back to our tower. We're talking with Delilah about just like what's happening, what do we think is going on type deal. And the wave receiver starts beeping. And the wave receiver has now replaced our compass in our compass slot. Ben, would you like to take over from here?
I was going to say, in the evening, this is day 77's evening, correct?
Yes.
This is whenever the frequency thing is going off and Delilah is drunk.
Yes, that's right. This whole thing, she's like, I'm getting drunk tonight. And
she's
like,
getting
makes a
more
point
and
of
more
saying it.
unhinged, yeah.
Yeah, which is, you can kind of start to pick up on the underlying, the festering, the sort of, je ne sais pas. So anyway, we're following the wave receiver, and we end up finding this, what's called an alarm box and a strange bag, which inside of the strange bag are keys that get you into the cave? Question mark, exclamation mark. And at this point, you're kind of strolling through a field going, oh, well, this is interesting. And then this kind of like, this scene actually made me nervous when Delilah is on the line with you and she goes, someone's in your tower.
Yep.
Well, no, she says that she thinks it's you.
Yeah, she thinks it's you.
That's what she's
like,
first.
She's like, well, that doesn't matter because you're safe in your tower now. And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm down in the middle of the woods. And then she says, that's you. You're not in your tower right now. And then he says, no. And then she says, oh my God. And then he says something and then she doesn't answer.
Well, and to be honest, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to be honest, I'm now starting to kind of bite down on some of the conspiracy stuff because it's the way she says, like, how do I say this? I think one of the most impressive things an actor can do is when an actor acts while they're acting, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
It's like, and I've heard this is a thing, but like if Seth MacFarlane is doing Peter Griffin, and while Peter Griffin does an impression of Liam Neeson, like that's really impressive, right? The fact that or like he did Kermit the Frog being Liam Neeson. He was like, I have a very particular set of skills. During this particular moment, she kind of sells me a little bit here. It sounds a little bit baity though when she's like, you have to get to your tower now. Like at first blush, I was like, I'm screwed. But watching a playthrough recently, I was like, wait a second. Is she faking this? I don't know. And Rick, I know you have something to say about this.
When you get back to your tower, there's a Walkman taped to your door. And I got it just a little bit out of order. Somebody recorded you talking about burning down the facility, and they taped it there. So it seems they have you framed. So just to recap the last couple of events, somebody placed a bag with a tracker in the brush deliberately to get you to leave your tower to get keys to this cave. While you were gone, whoever that person was taped a walkie to your door to frame you for the destruction that just took place. So that's sort of where we're at right now. We don't know who yet this is.
Mm-hmm. And we don't know if it was the same person that left the bag in addition to was in our place of residence. So this person is trying to blackmail us in some way, shape, or form. Also, Rick, you didn't get it wrong before. You got the story right in the right order. You didn't mix up anything.
The bag, I think, was the only.
Yeah, you definitely didn't.
So it's day 78, and this is the last 2 days of the game. We're going to that cave, and that cave, we've been passing through it throughout the entire game because it's like a central point to get us between two trails. And there's been a section that we haven't been able to get into. Now we've got the keys. As we open it and move forward, right as we're out of view from the gate, somebody slams it and locks it behind you. Also, obviously, your walkie-talkie doesn't work in the cave. To which Henry just starts screaming even louder into it. Because why not?
It's a perfect solution.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was freaked out in the cave when the door shut. I kept looking behind me to see if there's anyone there.
You find a little hideout that belonged to Brian Goodwin, the kid that used to be here under his dad, Ned, and who kind of took a liking to Delilah. Conveniently, he left a pack of anchors for you that you were going to go back to your tower and grab anyway. Anchors are like little things that you drive into rocks, like the cracks of rocks, to like loop rope or like gain footing. So that's kind of cool. I also have a note here that the world building around like all of this kid's life and everything is pretty good. There's like a little note that says, I took these from my dad. He leaves it, Brian does leave it for a park ranger to find. And he's like, "Dear park ranger, I took these from my dad, but I don't want him to know. So I'm going to leave them here and he'll think they're missing. But then you'll find this and you'll get a reward. Thank you so much. P.S. The reward will be good." And then you can find like a bunch of his homework too, like science stuff. Later on, you find like his Wizards and Wyverns character sheets. It's just really nice. You never get to meet this kid, sort of, and but you still feel like you know him. It's really nice. It's really nice.
Very, very cute. Like Reagan era, or sorry, Clinton era.
Well,
like,
no,
just
George
kid.
H.W. Bush era.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. 80s. Very, very cute. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate your correction. Like, but like a very all-American type kid, like a good kid by all accounts, and you feel bad,
One thing that we do learn from Delilah is that those girls turned up, those missing girls. They're fine. They're in jail for stealing a tractor from a farmer on their drunken teenage rampage. So those girls are accounted for. They're not, even if you do get in trouble with the law for like blowing up that place, you're not going to get blamed for like kidnapping or murder because they were just being dumb kids.
Yeah, there was a little subplot where Delilah talked about how she never reported that you actually saw the girls, even though you did. You can tell her to report it, but she still doesn't do it no matter what you tell her. She doesn't put in the report that you saw the girls on that night that they purportedly went missing. So Henry's kind of shitting himself about that, and Delilah doesn't seem to really, like, she's also shitting herself, but like she doesn't seem to care that she incriminated you along with her simply for selfish gain, which I think is kind of shitty, but that's like a little Delilah characterization thing that like maybe is like one of her like main flaws, like what lands her here in this world, and we can kind of talk about that at the end as we wrap up our ideas. But so moving forward, we now have our little pin cavey guys. What the hell are they called? The rappelling hooks that we can drive into the stone. So we can now like delve into the cave proper, because before we had to find our way out. And we can delve into the cave proper now that we have access to the bottom. And we get down to the bottom, and then you look off into the distance in the cave, and you see written below your cursor, it just says figure. And you don't really like know what or who it is. You walk further into the cave, and below a pile of loose rocks is the body of the boy whose camp was above. And it's very clear that he had some kind of climbing accident, fell, and died.
It's worth mentioning that your radio never works in the cave.
Yes.
So you find the body of Brian Goodwin, and you can't even immediately have the consolation of anybody. You're just there with Brian and basically no radio.
It's this interesting juxtaposition of being alone in the forest, but still having this walkie-talkie, someone to talk to this whole time, and then the one time that really, like, well, there are a lot of times that you could use the company, but the one time where I feel like it is vital that you should have someone to talk to, or like
That trauma.
right, just like unload a little bit of that. It's a very heartfelt moment, and then you do this little cutscene where you step over his body, and the camera kind of like pans over very nicely, and again, the visuals are very stunning. It looks very realistic. It's very sad. It's really, really sad.
I would agree.
I know I'm putting a lot of things out there, but it's also worthy of noting as well that this game doesn't go shy on the swearing. They definitely use a lot of profanity in this game as well, and like the visual imagery of the dead body is also pretty graphic.
Yeah, when you end up leaving the cave, you were able to talk to Delilah after you get shut in. You find your way out. You talk to her and say, yeah, somebody locked me in the cave. That's when she tells you about the girls, but then you go back in the cave. And as Ben said, the walkies don't work down there. So when you go out, you're able to tell Delilah, Brian's body is in there. He's dead. It looked like an accident. And this is the first time where, like, I know I called Delilah a liar at the beginning. I'm not certain that she did know this. I don't think she knew that Brian had died. Just because, like, this is the first time she sounds genuinely distraught and grief-stricken. But, yeah, it's a touching scene. I believe it's here. No, actually that's in a little bit. Sorry, I don't want to get ahead of myself. But yeah, that's kind of how we tie up that cave for right now.
Right, so that brings us to day 79.
It starts with the fires merging, which is really kind of, I don't know about you guys, but whenever it was like, the fires have merged, I was like, well, this game's ending soon. It just kind of felt like...
the smoke is very foreboding.
And what they do with the lighting inside of the smoke, I mean, it's very accurate to what actually does happen. I don't know, Rick, if you, and Vince, maybe you too, if you guys looked at the sky over the last couple of weeks because of the fires that are actually plaguing the West right now, and you saw that the moon was looking red a little too high in the sky, that was in fact because of the fires. So, I mean, the fact that they, and this isn't me trying to glorify that, I think it's horrible, and I think we need to do something about climate change, but that's a whole other can of worms. But the fact that they got that cast of the light into the ash and into the fire so well, it really drove home the pressure and the intensity and the urgency of what's going on. So while you're having this conversation with Delilah, and she's the last thing she says is on day 78 is something to the end to the effect of, we're leaving tomorrow anyway. So she gets done blaming herself and she's like, we're leaving tomorrow anyway. So fires have merged. Delilah, I get the sense that she doesn't really want to talk personally. She kind of feels a little bit like going to keep this at arm's length. She wants to explore all these topics with you, and all of a sudden she doesn't. And you kind of pry her the way that she pried you at the beginning of the game a little bit, trying to figure out what's actually going on. You're following the wave receiver, and she's telling you to like get to the evacuation site, but you follow the receiver, and that's where you find a tape taped to a rock face, to a rock wall, and it says Henry on it, and you conveniently have the Walkman player on you. And that's when we hear another voice in the game. That was a bump.
I got you.
Yeah.
I'll Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, so that cassette tape is from Ned Goodwin. That's Brian's dad. And if you listen to it, he says that it was him that bumped into you back in May, and he's been keeping a keen eye on you. He said that he was hiking with Brian when Brian fell, and he makes it a point to say it wasn't his fault. He was trying to teach him to climb. We'll learn that he was an Army vet or a military vet of some sort soon. He was teaching Brian to climb, and it was just an accident. And for better or for worse, what he did, rather than report it, was just lived in the woods like a hermit for the last 3 years, and is evading everybody's notice. Delilah believes, you tell Delilah about this, obviously. Delilah believes that Ned killed Brian. And that's kind of where the game ends too, the verbiage. I think Henry says, we learned that a former watchman killed his son. I don't know that I believe that, just because if we climb that rope that Ben mentioned next to the tape that we find Ned's hideout. It is filled to the brim with Brian's like old Father's Day cards, pictures, things like that. It's very clear that Ned loved his kid, and it seemed to me when I played through this, what was going on was that Ned knew that Henry found Brian, and he was like, I gotta show him that, like, I don't care if he knows that I'm here, but he's got to know that I didn't kill my kid. Like, that matters the most to him. That's how I took it. And then since I was thinking that way, I was like, why is Delilah being so hostile to this guy? Which we'll kind of, talk about in a bit. In here, you find a ton of, electronic tinkering equipment. But most importantly, you find one, that towards the end of his hideout, he has a clear view of your hideout, or your tower and Delilah's tower. And 2, he has been keeping logs, consistent logs on you, Delilah, and what's been going on since you got here. I'm gonna get to my theories towards the end. I won't get them here.
Right. So, was this our mystery man? What does this man have to do with the lab that we found? These are questions that are still not answered, but we at least know that he has been watching us. We know that this kind of arc of the missing boy and his father has kind of come to a close, and this is the last thing that we do before we now are making our way. We're making our escape. Is it? Yes, it is. Okay, it's good. So, and this is the last thing that we do before we make our escape. So on this day, since the fires have combined forces, the smoke makes the visibility very hard, and we kind of trudge our way through the smoke from the hideout, from the father's hideout, north all the way. And at this point, gentlemen, I'm interested to see what options that you got. We go up north to Delilah's tower for pickup, and you can kind of like ask her to wait for you. And because she's like, no, I really want to get on a helicopter. I want to leave. After you kind of radio to her everything, and you kind of give her this whole info dump, she has this kind of crisis of, I don't know if it's like a crisis of like moral ambiguity, or if it's just like she just has this immense feeling of guilt because she kind of attributes, was it Brian? The boy's name is Brian, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she attributes Brian's death to herself because she didn't call it in when those years ago when he went missing, when she wound up finding him. She kind of let him go and said, the boys will be boys, and she kind of attributes the guilt of his death to herself. And she doesn't really give a shit about the father or like any of that stuff after the point that she finds out that Brian has been found. She kind of just like drops the whole, he's been listening. She doesn't really care.
Yeah, and you radio her, you get to her hideout, or I don't know why I keep calling it a hideout. You get to her tower while this storm is raging, and you finally get to see like what her living quarters looks like. You can see that she's got a big radio setup, like a legitimate radio setup, which she should have because she's the kind of captain boss here. She also has a big bottle of tequila next to that, which kind of plays into, I don't think I mentioned it, but we saw back at the, when we found those dossiers on us that we learned that was actually Ned writing those, we saw that Delilah supposedly had an alcohol problem. And that makes sense because, she also called us drunk that one time, and et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But we see that there. We call Delilah. She's already gone. Vince, did you already talk about this?
Nope.
Okay. Delilah's already gone. You can have one last conversation with her. You can ask her to come to Boulder with you, to which she says, like, no, I'm not doing that. You can suggest she be a shrink, which is what I told her to do. And there's another option. I don't quite remember what it is. But basically, she just tells you to, figure out what you're going to do next summer, because neither of you can come back here after this. And that's pretty much it. There was no talk of Julia on my playthrough because I never brought Julia up outside of the dream sequence. But then she says, yeah, the helicopter's coming to take you away. You can actually stay, I found out. You can just kind of walk up to the helicopter and then walk away, and they end up leaving you, which kind of implies that you die there. That's interesting.
That's interesting. Ooh, we'll unpack that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else would happen. That fire is raging, and there's no one else there to pick you up. But otherwise, you get picked up, and that's kind of the end of the game. You go home. And that's really, a lot of people hated the ending. And I'm curious what you boys thought of it.
I thought it was an okay ending. My Delilah at the end, she, I got a much more positive experience, Rick, from her. She asks about Julia. She asks if I'm going to go see her. She says I should go see her. And then we kind of have this little heart-to-heart where I say, what if she doesn't remember me? And there's just a very tender moment that says, like, you're not doing this for her. You're doing this for you. You need to do this for as much as you would for you as you would for her. And then Henry kind of like has this long moment of silence, and then you don't get an option. And then she just says, like, best of luck with everything, Henry. Like, I wish you the best in the future. And then you just hang up. And that's it. That's all you hear. I liked it. Ben?
Yeah, I too had Julia brought up when I got to the tower, which was a really anxious moment, to be honest, finding her tower and climbing it and going through everything and doing literally everything you have both already touched on. I rather liked the ending with the helicopter and being taken away. I mean, you see the first person you've seen the entire game, which is the man in the helicopter. You know what I mean? I mean, like, sure, you see the silhouettes of the ladies, right? But you and you see a guy with the flashlight, but like, it's the first person who like grabs your hand, pulls you into the helicopter, and it's
and like looks at you for a second too. Like the game takes a second to pause and like look into the eyes of the other person, because you haven't really seen very many people for about 2 months.
Well, right. What I was getting at was a lot of people didn't like the ending. They felt it was anticlimactic. And I kind of like that. This made me think of the ending of The Sopranos too. I don't think this is on the same tier as The Sopranos, obviously, but it's that sort of ending in narratives where it's like, life doesn't work that way, where we don't have every single loose end tied up. It just doesn't work that way. It's the ending to me felt as real as it could possibly be. Yep. Now there's a bit of dissonance with that because like a lot of the story is a little bit pretty dramatic. It's not quite quote unquote real, but that's pretty minor. I liked the ending. I thought it worked. Now the thing is though, is that this game puts out a lot of information to you that it never elaborates upon, and it kind of leaves you to figure out your own theories and such. It makes you kind of think for it. It doesn't just kind of hand you a happy ending. And that's kind of where my overarching theory of Delilah being in on this whole thing comes into play. So if I may, can I get it out?
Please, I don't want to interrupt this train of thought. You go for it.
So what I think, and this is a combination of reading like other people's thoughts and then just saying, do I agree with that? I don't know. Or yes or no. I think that Delilah, the reason that she never, or not never, but the reason that she let Brian come with Ned is because I think that they were romantically involved. And this is the premise to the whole thing. So I think Delilah knew that Ned was there. I don't think that she knew that Brian was there, or at least I'm not certain that she did. Otherwise, because that kind of impacts the ending. I think that she knew Ned was there, and I don't think she was planning on Ned seeing you. It could have been inconsequential at the beginning, except Delilah starts to like you too, and Ned gets jealous of that. And we actually have some evidence of that in Ned's hideout. When he first starts talking, or taking notes, I should say, when you first get here, he literally writes, 2F or H, I forget what shorthand he uses. He's like, yeah, he seems like a nice fella, good fella. And then shortly after, like once Delilah starts saying that she likes you more than the other lookouts, he starts referring to you as a bad guy, unreliable, abandoning his wife. Like his tone completely does a 180, completely shifts. So I think going all the way back to the beginning, I think the Grizzly is the one that mauled the girls' camp. But I think that Ned planted your sheets there to make you think that it was the girls. This let Ned cut the communication lines. And this is who Delilah was talking to when she says, yeah, I don't think he has any idea. I think what she meant was, yeah, I don't think that Henry knows that you're there or who you are. And this also makes sense because going back to the walkie-talkie thing, it doesn't work. Like you can't like bug a walkie-talkie, right? It's frequency based. Also, it makes sense because I think Delilah would have asked Ned just to calm Henry down, so Henry didn't think that they were being spied on. She had Ned deliver the walkie-talkie, which makes sense because, like I mentioned, Delilah's not going to come down past Henry's tower to put the new walkie in a secret Dropbox, right? That doesn't make sense. She probably had Ned do it because he was closer. That's why Delilah wanted Henry to stay in the tower and not like be walking around. She didn't want him to run into Ned. As far as the science equipment, that was there for a reason. Ned fabricated all of those dossiers on the two of you, which we find the drafts in his hideout. But Henry believed it outright. But remember, like we said, the scientists, it's said in the game, don't come until August 15th. Going off of Ned's notes, this last day is at the end of July. So the scientists haven't even come yet. So I don't think Ned was planning, nor Delilah was planning on Henry finding that. So Ned was the one that blew that up. And Ned was the one that planted the subversion for you to go get the bag with the tracker and the key to the cave. And then also planted the bugged tape on your door that got Delilah saying she's going to burn it down. So then when you go to the cave, Ned shuts you in there because he's thinking, yeah, he's not going to get out. He's going to die in there. No harm, no foul. He's never going to tell anybody. He's never going to tell anybody that my kid is dead in there. He's, this is taken care of. But of course that doesn't happen. So goes completely off the rails at the end. Ned says, we're fucked. I'm fucked. I'm going to just run, but I'm going to leave evidence showing that I did not kill my kid. So at the very least, I can have that on my conscience. And Delilah gets so fucking fired up because, again, she didn't know Brian was dead. And she gets fired up because she was romantically involved with Ned. And now she's seeing him in a completely different light. And that kind of also plays into why at the very end of the game, she has such a complete shift. And she's like, yeah, I'm out of here. I'm never coming back. Like, we're done. So my only thing that I haven't pieced together is why they were doing this. Like why Ned and Delilah had this thing going on and why they were like kind of keeping it secret and toying with him. Like I know why they're keeping it secret because neither of them wanted to go to the cops, right? And that's established. But why they were doing this whole thing, like watching Henry and everything, that's what I can't figure out. Maybe just because they were bored and they needed entertainment. I don't know.
See, the main aha moment that I had, like the main moment where it was like, oh my God, Rick, I think you're onto something, is when she suggests to burn down the camp. And I didn't think about it in the sense that like it was her stuff at that camp. Like it could have been her stuff there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Could have been like a don't look at the man behind the curtain type deal. That could have been just as much her camp.
Like, who could have done this? Let's burn it down. And
right. Right. Very out of character for her. Very strange to ask that.
Right. And Ned, like at that point, Ned knows that Delilah's taken a liking to you. And I think, Vince, you mentioned this. If there was any like walkie-talkie sexting, Ned would have heard it. So at this point, he would be completely like, I'm not, I'm done. So his framing Delilah for starting that fire makes a lot of sense if you think of it in that light.
See, The content of the actual notes is what's throwing me in this situation, because that kind of cements us into the viewpoint that Delilah is innocent in this, because Ned is writing all these notes about their conversations. So if Delilah was working with Ned, then all of the things that Ned is writing about Delilah and all of these things that Ned is doing behind Delilah's back, presumably, if we are operating under the assumption that Delilah is trying to bamboozle us.
Well, I don't think it's that she's necessarily trying to bamboozle you. I think it's just a weird form of entertainment for them. And then as far as Ned keeping those notes, if he's been out there for 3 years, I mean, that's probably just his version of entertainment. He says at one point, like, something to the effect of Delilah's a cassette tape that never needs to be flipped. Right, like she can.
Yeah, she's a record that never needs to be flipped, which is why Brian took such a liking to her.
Right. Yeah. So that implies that she talks and talks, and I mean, we know this. She goes on and on. I mean, she's a good conversation partner. So yeah, I think she knew from the beginning. I just think that once she found out Brian was dead, and once Ned went a little bit rogue when Delilah started liking you, I think that's what set this whole chain of events off.
It seems like an anthropological study a la The Truman Show.
Yeah, very much kinda. So. Yeah.
If one follows these sorts of flexuosities, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, right. I think I told one of you this before we recorded, but I meant to replay it again before recording. I just didn't get a chance to. I got really sucked up in BioShock, and I'm almost done with that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to replaying this and, trying different dialogue choices, but also just like trying to test this hypothesis to see if it holds up like in real time, Yeah.
Ben's Truman Show thing, I'm glad he brought that up, if I may, because like once I saw the Truman Show thing, I was like, this is a Truman Show thing. Like we are being studied somehow, but then that really never came to fruition. Like when you're in the scientist camp and you see the ways in which you are being studied, it seems anthropological, like sociological in a sense. And then that never really pans out, Ben. So I thought it would turn out to be some kind of Truman Show type deal, But
oh yeah, the things that still have me kind of itchy and curious, if I can touch on these quickly, is the fact that there's this whole element of Julia and her family, and I feel like there's more there. I'm not trying to go that far off the rails here, but I get this sense that there's, I don't know, her voice coming in that clearly. Now, I mean, it could have been a dream, right? It very well could have been, but there are some things that I wonder about. And, what if her parents are so not wild about you that they're trying to be your demise? I don't know. I just made that up right now, but there's just so much unsettled there that makes me itchy. And the worst part is that it's one of those things where I feel like if I play the game multiple times, I won't get any further with Julia's story. But I do feel like
you could definitely get further into Henry's emotions. I feel like you kind of delve into Julia with Delilah, but you don't really get to like Henry's grief. You hear a lot of Delilah's grief, but not really Henry's very much.
Not precisely what I was going to say, but I will say it was like not about his grief, but like I want to like hear people say lines again. You know what I mean? I want to like because you've pointed out things. And Vince, you've realized things, and I'm sitting here going, "Oh my gosh, I need to like play, like I need to immerse in it again." Because I've played it once, I watched a playthrough, and I just like, I want to find things. I don't know.
You could read into small details, things like that, yeah.
Right, and I think that's a good thing for this kind of thing. Like I like games and media that let readers and viewers come to their own conclusions. I do think this one leaves a little too many loose ends out there that kind of hinders that, because there's always well, what about this? No matter what theory you come up with. But yeah, I think a replay would be good. I'm certainly looking forward to replaying it. Oh, there was something else that I wanted to say. Replying to Ben. Oh, Ben, one thing that made me laugh, I was watching a YouTube of like a plot summary or something. And somebody in the comments was like, well, the devs knew that people would pick up on Delilah being a liar, because who was it in the Bible that tempted Samson? The devs knew, and I was like, I don't think that's as obvious of a call out as you're making it to be.
No, absolutely not. That's hysterical. No fucking way. That's such a shot out of left field.
What I do think is interesting, though, is that they said that the walkie-talkie system was directly inspired by BioShock and the main character's relationship with Atlas, which we're not going to get into spoilers for that, but if that is true, that is interesting, and would support the unreliable narrator viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so excited for BioShock, but that's another time, another place. Ben, you shared your wrapping up thoughts, I guess. Were those your wrapping up thoughts on this?
I suppose. I was going to say I could go on, but I think I've got it. I do want to touch on the numbers quickly because we actually didn't.
We didn't do Ben by the numbers? Let's do it.
It's not about Ben by the numbers. It's about the numbers, period. It's worth noting that the game sold more than 500,000 copies within a month of its release, and over 1 million copies by the end of its first year. And as of 2018, because for whatever reason, the information I found wasn't terribly updated, Firewatch has sold over 2.5 million copies, and that is across multiple platforms.
Yeah, a solid play. Yeah, the sales reflect that. That's sick.
But I think people are looking for games like this. I think people are looking for games that immerse you. Because, don't get me wrong, I love a good FPS. I love a good RPG. I like a good JRPG. I like a platformer. But these immersive walking simulators, I think, are really on the rise. And this is a good one. This is a sturdy one.
This is a game you could put the kids to bed at 9 o'clock, and then you could play this for about an hour before you fall asleep on the couch.
Get smashed and just...
Yeah,
Sorry.
Great game. So if I may put some caps on this as well, my little caps that we didn't get to talk about, if I can recap those. I feel like the major themes that I thought came out of this game in no particular order, being alone and how to handle being alone with oneself, being alone with the tragic weight of loss, with the tragic weight of guilt, with the tragic weight of making future decisions, and we kind of see that pan out with the Delilah situation. Those are just some things that I wanted to put in there, and major themes that I thought about throughout this whole game.
Here.
Yeah, I agree with all of those. One thing that I also, in addition to those, Vince thought about was the theme of alcoholism. I don't think this was intended. I think I'm reading into this, but that is part of art. As a creator, you can just put your stuff out there and everybody can interpret it however they want. Anyway, alcohol plays a very big part in Henry meeting Julia, Henry falling out with Julia, Henry going there. I think you can look at it as running away from alcoholism is destructive because, again, Delilah is usually drinking and is noted as an alcoholic, which doesn't inherently make her a bad person, but it supports the fact that if you run away from confronting that, then things spiral. And the game's anticlimactic, quote-unquote, ending is representative of that. It's like confronting those demons. It's not going to be a big cinematic thing. It's just something you've got to do.
Yep.
And that's also supported with if he doesn't leave and he chooses to stay there, we can infer that he dies. Right. It's one of those things. I don't think that's an intended theme, but I think it's a valid one to speak upon with the subject matter.
Actually, Rick, I think that, sorry, Ben, I know you're itching to get at this. But I know that I don't think that's actually a far-fetched assumption to make, because in the Firewatch, what you're doing is you're watching this fire slowly burn toward you.
Think about that.
And in what you're describing in this theme of alcoholism, or this theme of what I was saying before, it kind of ties in. How do we deal with the tragic weight of grief of loss? Delilah and Henry may have turned to the bottle, and an important part of the Firewatch is that you need to watch how far the fire spreads day by day. But in terms of these debilitative substance abuse situations, or even the weight of guilt or loss or being alone, if you just watch it day over day over day, you're watching that fire burn slowly. eventually it does get to you. And I think that's a great allegory for this game, if you will, since it's so short that I feel like it could be formed into one allegory. So
the beauty of a good game like this is the fact that when they are crafted this well and this intricately, you can interpret it in many ways. And, it can be an allegory. It can just be a story. It could be, for all we know, Henry losing his mind because of everything he's gone through. He could be having his own psychological break and his own level of paranoia. I mean, we're hearing things from one person's standpoint.
Ben, if to your point, Henry does also mention that Delilah, he's like, "Are you even real? Am I imagining you?" Like he actually says that to her.
We glossed over that.
That was the very first thing I actually thought about this when I played through this game was, is this all in his head?
Yes, it could. Well, yeah.
If you really wanted to chase that and make a point to it, and I know this could easily be justified as it's just a video game thing, but this is why Henry can hike. How the player as Henry can hike like 20 miles in 5 minutes across that whole map.
Well, and yeah, I mean, I'll be the first to tell you when I go to Disney World, I'm getting in, 25,000 steps a day easily. And so like if all you're doing is hiking, I mean, look at how many miles like the Greek walk every day. You know what I mean? So like if his brain is
in
somewhere
Yellowstone
else,
National Park, you know what I mean? That's not easy hiking. So
I mean, they say that running is like 90% mental, and with where he's at mentally, he probably can just go and go and go, and you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I love a game that there's so many endings that we can't necessarily prove unless the developer's like, this is what it is. So anyway,
yeah. So in case you haven't gotten our firm opinions, I think this one is a play, right, guys? This one's you guys should go out and play this.
Recommended
for sure. If you listen to this whole thing and haven't played it, sorry, sorry,
yeah.
It plays out way better.
It's still worth it.
Yeah, it's still worth it.
It's kind of ripping off Kingdom Hearts, but it's a little bit better than Kingdom Hearts.
You can't rip
that
off
is
what's
true.
You can't rip off bad. But that's for a future episode when Rick and Ben try to get me to play Kingdom Hearts, and I won't. Ever.
Attaboy.
All right, I think we've done it. I think once again, as we do every week, we've saved podcasting.
Wow.
Just wanted to plug this real quick before we sign out. Our socials, we're primarily active on Instagram at pixelprojectradio podcast. One thing that we haven't been doing is talking about ratings and reviews. Please go do that. It's super helpful. It's nice to read. If you rate our podcast, we will read it on air at the beginning of an episode, topic or game, either or. Just depends on when we see it. But yeah, if you do that, we would be gratefully appreciative, and we'll read you. We'll read you on air.
Yeah, it doesn't take long. Please do it. It's the second best way. The first best way to help us out is by referring us to a friend through word of mouth. So if you can't do that, leave us a review on whatever podcast app that you so desire, and that helps us out so much, and we do really appreciate that from the bottom of our hearts.
Absolutely, and perhaps it's at this moment that nice acoustic ambient music that sets the scene starts to play us into the sunset. Perhaps it's emerging beneath my voice as we speak, as we wrap this up. So
wait a minute, Rick, what's your name?
And hopefully it fades away.
Rick, what's your name?
And fades back.
My name, it's not Hank. I can tell you that. Don't ever call me Hank. It's Rick Firestone. That's my name.
Well, my name is certainly not Rick Firestone.
Nor is mine.
And we'd like to wish you a lovely end of the podcast.
This is Pixel Project Radio signing off. Thanks for listening.
I'm taking off for the woods to a place where there ain't no shirts. Don't need no books or ponds or the ponderosas. Don't need no lady or Mary the Mariposas. Can't waste no time in getting there. I'll do 80 down, 80 without a prayer. Don't need no gal, I'll spruce up for the spruces. Don't need no pal, I'll change my mood up for the mooses. Headed off to old Shoshone, birds and the bees won't know me. Men and war won't exist no more, and there ain't no gals to keep no score. And if you're wondering where